But Brandon, let's move on into our next topic, moving away from the tournament, moving into just general college basketball news and some of the big news to kind of shake it didn't shake it that much because the tournament's going on. And the tournament shakes everything and runs everything for this month and a little bit of April. Tom Crean, though, signed a 6-year deal with the Georgia Bulldogs. I want to ask you this. What does the Tom Crean hiring mean for the Georgia Bulldogs?
Well, I think it's going to be good for Georgia. This year they ended up 18-15 overall, 7-11 in their conference, right behind Alabama, and Alabama was a tournament team. I think that Tom Crean, he comes in, and I really do believe that with what Tom Crean can do, and things weren't going all that great at the end of his tenure with Indiana because I think it got stale, and he wasn't moving anywhere farther than Sweet 16, and they wanted something a little bit different. But there's a very good chance that Tom Crean can come in his first season and take Georgia from where they are right now to make them a tournament team. Again, because Alabama made the tournament this year, 20-16, 8-10 in the conference. Texas A&M made it. Mizzou, Arkansas, Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, Auburn. They all made it.
You know what I find funny about this hiring? That the hiring of Tom Crean came just one day after Thad Matta said, I don't want the job anymore. To me, that shows, I know Tom Crean has the job, but does that show that Georgia was kind of like, hey, Thad, it's yours. If you want it, it's yours. And then once Thad was like, nah, I don't want it, then they interviewed Tom Crean, he knocked it out of the park, and they hired Tom Crean. That's just one thing I look at. But the thing that I think of with this hiring, it comes at an interesting time. If this would have happened last March, I'd be saying that this is a primetime move, because the one thing you got to think about when Tom Crean was at Indiana, by the end of it, the Big Ten is changing slightly from what it was, but overall the Big Ten is a competitive basketball conference. Wisconsin was Wisconsin this year was 6-12 in conference, but Wisconsin was usually fighting for the top. You had Michigan State, Purdue, Ohio State, and Michigan, and Wisconsin is your top 5 within Indiana usually. And then you had teams like Penn State, which was competitive, and Iowa, which was competitive, but those were kind of middle-of-the-pack teams. Now it looked like, just looking at this year, you still had your Spartans, Boilermakers, Buckeyes, Wolverines were there, but this year there was a lot more teams. You had Northwestern, who, they went 6-12, but they could have played spoiler any night. You look at how good the Nittany Lions were that you believe should have made the tournament. The Nebraska Cornhuskers, who I believe should have made the tournament. And I just feel like the Big Ten has more competitive teams within its conference than the SEC does. Because I look at the SEC, and let's be completely honest, the SEC, and people might argue, for most of my life, the SEC has been about 2 teams. It's been about the Kentucky Wildcats of late and the Florida Gators before them. The only 2 teams you need to know from the SEC when it comes to basketball. I know what people are going to say, but Ricky, Mizzou had a second-seeded team, which I would say I think that was when they were in the Big 12, not the SEC. Look at this year. Tennessee came out, and look what Bruce Pearl was doing with the Auburn Tigers. I am interested to see this year, well, not this year, next year, how Tennessee and Auburn fare. Because, Kentucky kind of had a down year compared to what we are used to them, mainly because they weren't the number 1 overall seed in their own conference tournament. Didn't matter. They won it anyways. But I wonder what's going to happen, because I feel like the SEC is just as competitive up top. You look, same number of teams in double figures within a game of each other. Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mizzou, Mississippi State, and Texas A&M. However, those bottom teams, you look at the bottom teams, especially where Georgia is right now, none of those teams, to me, are upsetting those top teams. Where in the Big Ten, I could easily see more of a besides like Rutgers and Illinois, they get to push over here. But like an Iowa Hawkeye team that wasn't good this year. But I think on any given night, I think the Hawkeyes could play up and beat one of those top teams, give that a better chance of happening than like a South Carolina to beat one of those top teams.
Well, but what I think Georgia has done is they've gone out and they've gotten themselves a coach who's 356 and 231 in his career, over a winning percentage well over 500, and you go and you get a coach that is used to a winning culture with what he was doing in Indiana. They were a solid team. They were a good team. They were a we're going to the tournament a lot team. That's what they need in Georgia. And what that could do is a lot of times players, recruits, they want to follow a good coach. And how many guys do you think that Tom Crean might be able to pull now that he wasn't able to pull when he was in the Big Ten? It might be different. The area might be different. He might be able to get guys that he wasn't able to get because it was the Big Ten in Indiana. I'm sorry, Indiana is not exciting. Well, I've been there. It's not exciting. But a place like Georgia, a place like the SEC, that could be a little bit more intriguing and exciting for a player. And you even said it. You talked a lot, Ricky. Now hold on.
I know.
Is that Florida, you said it. They are one of those teams that's been good. As we remember when we were younger, they were the good team, the Joakim Noah teams. They were really good teams. Yeah. Kentucky, for as long as we can remember, has been that good team. Who's going to be that next one that jumps up and clearly says, we're going to be the next good team? Yes, you mentioned Auburn's got things going on. Tennessee's got things going on. Alabama was able to get there this year. Georgia, why couldn't it be Georgia? Why couldn't it be, or as they may say, why can't it be us? And I think you bring Tom Crean in, a coach who's got a really good coaching record, who has a good coaching resume, who's been able to do some really good things, who is not one who has, I guess, been shy from being part of the tournament. His teams have been tournament teams. Have they gone as far as he would have liked them to? No, but that's something that I think would change for Georgia. And I think that would bring in a whole lot more recruits, because you get a guy like Tom Crean, who had a really good coaching record and who has a really good, I think, stature in the coaching realm. Guys want to play for winners. And that's, something that Tom Crean is. I don't want to, put him up in the, I'm not trying to put him in the Krzyzewski and stuff like that, because he's not there. But a guy who has been to the tournament, a guy who has had multiple winning seasons, that's what I think Georgia is hoping to get out of this, that by putting him as their head, he'll be able to build a good staff and he'll be able to build a really strong team.
Well, and the thing that I'm looking at right now, doing a little bit of research before my next point. I know people are going to say, oh, Ricky, didn't do your research there. But the thing that I'm looking for is just a fact of what kind of player, because the big thing that I think that Tom Crean is going to bring to this team is recruiting. And I look at the years, I'm just pulling up the years in Indiana that he went to the NCAA tournament, which was 4 years. The first one was 2011, 2012. He had 4 players averaging double digits, and you had guys like Cody Zeller, you had Wofford with there. Wofford was a junior. You had Oladipo, who was a sophomore at that time. You had, I think, Zeller, that was Zeller's freshman year, but he was a guy who I'm going to get to in a second. We got to know his name a lot. Then you go to the next year, 2012, 2013, where Zeller's still there, Oladipo's still there. That's Wofford's next year. Jordan Hall is still there. Yogi Ferrell is now, I believe, a sophomore in that team. Yeah, he was only averaging 7.5 points per game. And then the next year that he's in the tournament was 2014, 2015. Guys like Yogi Ferrell, who's an upperclassman. Guys like James Blackman Jr., who I believed was not a freshman at that time. Or no, he was. He was one of the freshmen. But that was the one with Max Otrell. You had Yogi Ferrell, who that was his junior year. Thing I'm getting at is he's not going to build a one-and-done culture. You're not going to get a one-and-done culture with Tom Crean. He's going to be the one to kind of bring you into that, hey, I'm going to have guys that stick around and you know their name. The big ones that I look at, Oladipo was one of those. You look at Cody Zeller was one of those. Wofford was one of those. You look at guys that he had, like Blackman Jr. stayed around for his second year. Yogi Ferrell stayed around till his senior year at Indiana. And even another one, this is coming from his Marquette days. This is one that was 2001, 2002. Guy who is in the NBA now, has himself an NBA ring, is from the Chicagoland area and shares a birthday with me. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
D. Wade. D. Wade was on that Marquette team. D. Wade was a guy who stuck around from 01 to 03 at Marquette, so he wasn't a one-and-done guy. You're not going to get that with Tom Crean. He's going to build that culture. He's also a guy where I believe he's also like the Calipari in a sense where education is important. I mean, coming from the Big Ten, it obviously is. Most of the Big Ten schools, that's like, I know it just from Illinois in general, you're not just an athlete, you're also there getting into classes, getting credits, getting good grades in the classroom. That's what he's going to do at Georgia. And Georgia, I think, give them about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, and they'll be a tournament team. Don't know how far they'll go, don't know what seed they'll be, but they will be a tournament team within 2 to 3 years with Tom Crean.
The Bulldogs this season scored 68.1 points per game.
That ain't good.
That's 301st in the nation.
Not good at all.
Now, if you look at Tom Crean and his past offenses, he gets a lot of flack for running a complex, difficult offense. Complicated. But when Indiana came back on the scene, when he took over, around the 2011-2012 season, because I'm trying to look and see when he did take over, 2008-2009, so a couple of years after he takes over, their offense had ranked in the top 20 in the nation 4 out of 5 years. So he's had a lot of good players, but only 2, one of them being Cody Zeller, were top-tier recruits. And he was able to do a lot with a little.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I think that Tom Crean is one of the guys that is going to be able to turn this team around rather quickly, because he knows what he wants to do. He knows the guys that he needs to get and that he needs to go after, and he knows what he wants to put in place. I mean, he already has a set offense that he is going to run, and he's going to run it. And as confusing or as complicated as it may be, he's going to do it.
Well, and to me, it's going to be interesting to see how this goes. 'Cause I'm going to go back to a point that I made in the beginning of what are we going to see from Auburn? What are we going to see from Tennessee next year? Like, to me, those are two teams. Yeah, they went 13-5 this year, but are they one-hit wonders? And the reason why I say that, the only reason why I say that is they kind of came out of nowhere this year. I was not predicting Auburn, and I know that like, oh, Ricky didn't predict it, so it must be true. I didn't predict Auburn to be at the top of the conference. I didn't pick Tennessee to be at the top of the conference. I was assuming Kentucky would get their shit together before they did and win the conference, but they didn't. They're getting it together now, and it looks like they could make a run with what they have in the tournament. It'll be interesting to see if any of those two teams, like Auburn, Tennessee, fall back a little bit from their 13-5, and then that makes it a little bit easy, not easier, but it gives because they fall back, Georgia can come up a little bit and join those teams that are fighting at the top of the SEC for those, let's say, first-round buys in the SEC conference tournament.
It's going to be interesting this next season to see, is the SEC going to be strong again? Are they going to have as many teams into the tournament as they did this past season? You look at all the teams they had in, and you go, wow. I mean, and this is for a conference that is a football conference. So for this many teams to make it in for basketball, that's really intriguing. But I think to bring it back to Georgia, we could be talking about the Georgia Bulldogs as one of those teams next year.
Now, I'm going off the cuff here, and you're going to get mad at me, but I want to ask you this question anyways, because I'm starting to think about this. I completely forgot about this until we were starting talking about Tom Crean. Tom Crean, not the only coaching hire that people are talking about this week. A lot of people are talking also about what the Memphis Tigers did as well, and they were a team. They got rid of Tubby Smith. He's now gone. And to me, interesting, like I said, off the cuff, moving over a little bit, Penny Hardaway. Like, to me, it's like, yeah, I know he's like recently AAU guy, Memphis area, but like I was like, holy crap, NBA player. What did you think when you heard, all right, Memphis Tigers, Penny Hardaway, or did you think, oh, that's good for Memphis, and then move back to the power schools, the main schools? Because Memphis isn't in one of those Big Tens, SECs, ACCs kind of a conference.
Well, I thought that was cool. I mean, they certainly have someone who has name recognition now. If they didn't before, they definitely do now with the name recognition, and that's going to hopefully bring a lot of people to that team, to that school, to want to play for Penny Hardaway, and that makes sense. I mean, that's a good move based on that if it works.
I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on. You want to hear a conspiracy theory that I'm cracking up in my head?
Sure.
Or brewing up in my head?
Sure.
We're going to get to this coach in the next segment, but who's one player, or I should say one star NBA son who decommitted from Arizona? Shaquille O'Neal. Who used to play with Shaquille O'Neal in Orlando? Penny Hardaway. I don't know if this is going to happen, but this is my conspiracy theory. I think there could be a way for Shaq's son, who decommitted from Arizona, to make his way over to Memphis and play for Penny Hardaway.
Didn't he already have like 3 other schools lined up?
Just because I'm going to look to see if he actually committed to a school, because I didn't hear anything about him committing. But just because you have a list doesn't mean that you're going to go to that school, and that now Memphis can't join and pop in there because of this hire. Last thing I said is this CBS article, Shaquille O'Neal's son wants no part of scandal and won't play for Arizona. That's the last thing, and it looks like, did they mention any teams? He originally committed to the Wildcats over UCLA, LSU, and Southern California, USC. So those were the 3 schools that he spurred to go to the Wildcats. Could Memphis then compete with any of those, just because maybe Shaquille goes, hey, you know what? Penny's over here. Penny, like, you could play for Penny Hardaway, the relationship there.
Ricky,
if Memphis Shaq's son.
This is what I've got to tell you, though, is that it shouldn't be up to Shaquille O'Neal. He's not the one going to play. It should be up to his son.
But you know that, like, a father would be like, just one of those
Yes, but
things.
I hope he's not LeVar Ball.
No, I don't think Shaq is. But I'm saying just that, like, where it's like sitting at the dinner table, like you're talking about something, just, what about Memphis? And then just plant the seed in the kid's mind and let the kid run with it. Let the kid make the decision. If he wants to say no, fine, no. But I was just throwing it out there. I think that could be interesting. That's the first thing I thought of with Penny Hardaway. But last thing I want to ask here, circling it back to Georgia, I'm giving you 2 years, 2 to 3 years I'll give you. Where's Tom Crean and the Georgia Bulldogs in 2 to 3 years?
I think Sweet 16.
You think, not just in the tournament, but a Sweet 16 team?
Yeah.
Low seed, middle seed, high seed?
As a middle seed.
Okay. So like an 8-9 kind of a seed?
2 to 3 years is, I think, plenty of time for Tom Crean to be able to turn around a team that's not bad, but they're not good.
It's taken them 2 or 3 at both Marquette and Indiana to get them to a postseason tournament.
I think that would fall right in line with what he has been doing. And I think that Sweet 16 could be in the cards. Could be.
I don't know about Sweet 16.
Is that a little bold?
It's a little bold, but I like it. I like how bold it is. I'm going to say they're in the tournament in 2 to 3 years. 2 years, could be 3 years. Like I said, that's going off of how I think it took them 2 years at Marquette, 3 years at Indiana to get into the tournament.
And Ricky, after what we're seeing this year, anything's possible.
Yeah, anything. You can get in as a 16 seed and win a game these days. But you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below about the Tom Crean hiring. What does this mean for the Georgia Bulldogs? And I'll also throw the Penny Hardaway one out there. I just had to mention it. Let us know what you guys think about that all down below in the comment section.